It looks like you've uploaded multiple documents, but I couldn't find a specific question or topic from your side. Could you clarify what you're looking for, or how I can assist you with the files you've uploaded? Scene 2. Back home. Saturday morning, I picked Erica up at the airport. She was standing by the baggage claim area when I spotted her, looking tired but smiling. The sort of tired someone has when they've spent a couple of days on their feet for work, but still feel good about what they've accomplished. She gave me a quick hug, kissed me on the cheek, and thanked me for picking her up. "How was the trip?" I asked as we walked toward the parking lot. "Good. Just a lot of meetings and a bit of downtime," she said, her tone light. "Nice to be back, though." I didn't press her for more details. Her usual upbeat energy was enough to tell me it hadn't been anything extraordinary, just a work trip like she said. I figured she was still a little tired from the travel and would need a few hours to adjust. We drove back home, and the day seemed normal at first. That night, we went to my uncle's retirement party. Erica was all smiles, mingling with family, laughing at jokes, talking about the upcoming holiday plans. She was her usual self around people she knew well, charming, engaging, in a way that put everyone at ease. There was nothing unusual about it. She acted like nothing had changed. It felt like we had slipped back into a routine. I tried not to pay too much attention to how much she was drinking. She hadn't had much to drink on the trip, and now she was having a couple of glasses of wine. That was fine. At least, I thought it was. When we got home, I figured she'd be tired after such a busy day. We both crashed early, and Sunday morning, we went through our usual routine: grocery shopping, cleaning, errands. But even then, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. She wasn't as energetic as usual. Her usual chatter about new recipes she'd seen online or plans for the upcoming months was missing. The sparkle in her eyes, the excitement she'd normally have to tackle the week ahead, it wasn't there. She seemed distracted, more focused on the task at hand than anything else. I didn't say anything at first. I assumed she was just worn out from the trip. People handle travel differently, right? Maybe she just needed a couple of days to get back in the groove. Monday afternoon, I got a text from Erica. "I think I have a urinary tract infection. I'm going to get it checked out after work." I was in the middle of a meeting at work when it popped up. When I saw the text, I quickly typed back, "Hopefully it's not something worse." I didn't think much of it at first. UTIs weren't something to freak out over, right? They happened all the time. I was just trying to be lighthearted, a little joking. I figured it was the right thing to say, keep things breezy. But the response I got wasn't at all what I expected. "What do you mean by that? Do you think I'm cheating on you?" The words sat in my stomach like a rock. I stared at the text, my pulse kicking up. What the hell? Where did that come from? I tried to brush it off at first, telling myself I was just overthinking it. No, just a joke. I didn't mean it that way. But the fast, dismissive reply I got back made the unease I was starting to feel worse. All good, just like that. Short. Empty. The first time I'd felt that chill between us in a long time. Something wasn't adding up. Scene 3, the infections. Over the next few days, Erica's symptoms got worse. I'd ask her how she was feeling, and each time it seemed like the answer was the same. Not great, just a little worse than yesterday. Her fatigue kept dragging her down, and she started mentioning that she felt chills and aches in her joints. She'd been to the doctor, and she was still waiting for the results of some tests. She called me one evening, sounding frustrated, saying the doctor had given her antibiotics for a severe UTI and a bacterial imbalance. I made a note to grab some soup for her when I got home. It sounded like it was just another run-of-the-mill infection, but the fact that she kept complaining about new symptoms felt off to me. I didn't say anything about it, though. She was obviously going through something, and I wasn't going to add to her stress. When I got home, I made sure she had everything she needed: soup, medicine, comfort. I tried to play the concerned husband, but every time I went to check on her, something about her behavior nagged at me. She wasn't exactly herself. She was quieter, less engaged. She'd smile, but it wasn't as warm as usual, and she spent most of the evening curled up in bed. The next few days felt like I was walking around on eggshells, tiptoeing around her moods. I tried to keep it light, but the distance between us was starting to grow, like an invisible wall that I couldn't quite break down. By the end of the week, Erica came home from her second doctor visit with more news. "It's oral thrush," she said, looking almost embarrassed as she explained. A fungal infection, apparently. It's just a side effect of the antibiotics. That sounds like a lot, I said, not knowing how to react. I hadn't really heard of it before, but I wasn't about to show how unfamiliar I was with it. Yeah, she muttered. They gave me a prescription for that too. She didn't look up from the couch, her fingers turning her phone over and over in her hands. It was like the weight of whatever was going on with her was too much for her to carry. I didn't say anything at first. I didn't want to make her feel worse, but I also couldn't help but feel like there was more to the story. Something wasn't right, but I couldn't place it. I told myself it was just a fluke. She'd gotten sick right after the trip, maybe from a change in routine or something she picked up from the conference. That could happen, right? But the longer this went on, the more it started to feel like an excuse, a convenient set of symptoms that seemed to drag on without explanation. Every time she talked about the infections or new issues with her health, I kept wondering, was she really sick? Or was there something else I was missing? I started to pull back a little, more out of instinct than any real evidence. I didn't want to be overly pushy, but I also didn't want to make her feel like she had to hide anything. I thought maybe a little space would help her open up, but she didn't. If anything, the distance between us grew. She was physically in the room, but emotionally, she was miles away. The nights were the worst. She'd turn over in bed, pulling the blankets tight around her. It was like she was shutting me out, even as she lay next to me. The silence was deafening, and I hated how much it made me question everything. At some point, I stopped asking how she was feeling. It wasn't that I didn't care, it was that I didn't know how to ask, without feeling like I was digging for answers she wasn't ready to give. But I knew, deep down, that something wasn't adding up. And still, she kept telling me that it was all just part of her recovery, that it was just infections, no big deal. But the more she said that, the more my stomach churned with uncertainty. I could feel something was off, and I couldn't shake the feeling that this whole situation was hiding something bigger than a couple of simple health problems. Scene 4. Strange Behavior. The weeks following Erica's diagnosis were the strangest of our marriage. She still hadn't opened up about what was going on. The antibiotics helped, or at least she said they did, but it didn't stop the distance between us from growing. I'd come home after work, and she'd be curled up on the couch, reading or scrolling on her phone. But there was no real energy behind her. The lightness, the warmth that used to be there, everything that made her her, was gone. It was like she was just existing, not living. I tried asking how she was doing, but the answers were always vague, like she was just going through the motions to get by. She didn't talk much about the trip, or the convention, or anything else for that matter. It was like she was holding back, intentionally building walls that I couldn't climb. I noticed more than just her silence, the subtle things. She started therapy without explaining why. I wasn't stupid. I could tell there was something deeper going on, but she refused to let me in. One night, as I was heading to bed, I found her in the bathroom, looking at herself in the mirror, tears in her eyes. "Erica," I asked, standing in the doorway. "What's wrong?" She quickly wiped her face, forcing a smile. "Nothing, just tired." But there was an emptiness behind her words, one that didn't match the woman I knew. "You can talk to me, you know," I said, stepping closer. "I know," she whispered. I don't know how to explain it. I don't feel like myself." "Have you been feeling this way for a while?" I asked, hesitant, trying not to push too hard. She nodded, and that was it. She didn't say anything more, just walked out of the bathroom, and that was the end of it. I didn't press further. I didn't want to push her away more than I already had, but the weight of the silence was crushing me. The following days felt like walking on a tightrope. We were living together, but we were strangers in the same house. The awkwardness between us made the air thick and suffocating. She kept herself busy, disappearing into her therapy appointments, spending long hours away from me. But it wasn't just her absence that was troubling. It was the new things she started saying. She'd sit in the living room late at night, her eyes lost somewhere far away, and ask me, "Is this all life is?" She'd say it so quietly, like she was asking herself more than she was asking me, but it still cut me deep. I wanted to tell her everything would be okay. I wanted to tell her we could work through this, whatever it was. But the truth was, I didn't know if I could fix whatever had broken her, and that terrified me. We were getting farther apart every day, and all I had were these quiet moments where I felt like I was losing her. She didn't mention being unhappy before, not like this. and certainly not in the 5 years we had been together. But now, she was telling me she didn't know who she was anymore, and I knew something big was being hidden, but no matter how many times I tried to break through, she wouldn't let me in. The walls she built only grew higher. I spent more time at work. I figured if I was there, at least I wouldn't have to face the tension at home, and maybe, just maybe, she'd open up to me on her own. But the longer I waited, the more I started to suspect something had happened during that trip. It wasn't the infections, it wasn't the doctor visits. Something else had changed, and it felt like I was the last to know. Every time she went to therapy, I found myself wondering if I was being left behind. Maybe I was just a bystander in her life now, unable to catch up, unable to be the husband she needed me to be. I started to lose track of where we had gone wrong, how we had gone from laughing at dinner tables to sitting across from each other in silence. And each night when I crawled into bed beside her, the same question haunted me. What happened on that trip? Scene 5. The confession. By mid-September, the tension between us was unbearable. Erica and I were like two strangers sharing a space, living parallel lives, but never touching. It had been weeks since I first noticed her emotional distance, and it only seemed to grow with each passing day. One night, as we were getting ready for bed, the silence between us felt heavier than it ever had before. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I couldn't keep living in a marriage that felt like it was already over. I stared at the reflection of us in the bathroom mirror. She was brushing her teeth, her face blank, her eyes a little too tired. She hadn't looked at me directly all day, and I couldn't handle it anymore. "Erica," I said, my voice steady but firm. She glanced at me, her eyes quickly shifting away again. "You need to tell me what happened during that trip." Her hand froze on the toothbrush, the only sound in the room, the steady hum of the bathroom fan. When she spoke, her voice was small, fragile. "I don't know what you mean." "Cut the crap," I snapped, finally losing patience. "The distance between us, the way you've been acting, I know something happened. I need to know what it is." She let out a slow breath, setting the toothbrush down. She turned to face me, her back against the sink. "You won't forgive me," she whispered, almost as if she was talking to herself. "I don't care if I forgive you," I said, my voice thick with anger and hurt. "I just need to know the truth." She met my eyes for the first time in days, her face pale, her lips trembling. She stepped back, wrapping her arms around her body like she was trying to protect herself. Then she spoke, her words coming out in a rush. I met someone at the hotel bar after my dinner with the clients. I drank too much and he just kept talking to me, and it felt like I needed someone to talk to." I swallowed hard, my mind spinning. "And then what?" She squeezed her eyes shut, as if trying to block out the memory. "I went to his room. We had sex. I don't even remember his name, but I know it was a huge mistake, a massive one. And now My heart dropped into my stomach as the realization hit me. The infections, the thrush, the UTI. It all made sense now, and I felt like the floor had just been yanked out from beneath me. My chest constricted. You're telling me those infections were from him? That's why you've been sick?" She nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes. I didn't think about the consequences then. I was just so lost. And now I regret it more than anything." She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. "I never meant to hurt you, but I did, and I don't know how to fix it." The anger I had been suppressing for so long flared inside me like a wildfire. I could barely hold myself together. "You destroyed everything," I spat, the words coming out sharper than I intended. "How could you do this to me? To us?" "I know," she choked out, her voice breaking. "I don't have any excuse. I was selfish. I've been so selfish, and I don't know why I did it." I was shaking now, my whole body trembling with rage and hurt. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to break something, but I stood there frozen, my mind racing. "You're telling me that you were so unhappy that you cheated on me, on our marriage, after everything? How could you?" She collapsed onto the bed, burying her face in her hands. "I'm sorry. I don't know why I did it. I don't even recognize myself anymore." I couldn't look at her. I couldn't stand the sight of her, of the woman who had betrayed me in the worst possible way, the woman I thought I knew. "I don't know who you are anymore," I said, my voice quiet and bitter. The words hit her like a slap. I didn't care. I was suffocating, and I needed to breathe. Her sobs filled the room, but I didn't know what to do with them. I didn't want her tears. I wanted the woman I married back, the woman who was honest with me, who loved me. I didn't know how to fix this. I don't think I can forgive you, I said, finally sitting down on the edge of the bed, my hands gripping the sides of my legs. My chest was tight, my throat sore. I don't even know if I can look at you the same way. I don't deserve your forgiveness, she whispered through her tears, her voice small and broken. I just wish I could take it back. I couldn't hear her anymore. I couldn't hear any more apologies, any more excuses. The damage had been done. Everything is different now, I said, getting up to leave the room. I couldn't be in here with her, not like this. You've changed everything. She didn't try to stop me as I walked out, but I could still hear her crying behind me, and I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't just her heart that was broken. It was mine too. Scene 6, Aftermath and Spiral. The days after Erica's confession were the darkest I'd ever known. The anger in me burned hot, and the grief hit in waves. Sometimes I felt like I was drowning. Sometimes I couldn't even breathe. It was all I could do to get through each day, pretending everything was fine at work, only to come home and feel the weight of what had happened crushing me. I'd lost weight, though I didn't care. I stopped eating meals like I used to, skipping lunch or just picking at my plate at dinner. The exhaustion, the constant ache in my chest, it was all consuming. I found myself getting snappy with people who didn't deserve it, having panic attacks while I was driving, or even in the middle of a conversation. It was like I couldn't control myself anymore. Erica kept writing me letters, apology after apology, begging for forgiveness. She'd leave them on the kitchen counter or slide them under the door when she thought I wasn't around. But I didn't care. I couldn't care. The words didn't mean anything to me anymore. She kept saying she didn't know why she did it. She kept saying she was sorry. But her words were hollow, like they came from someone else. She could beg until the end of time, but the trust was gone. It felt like I was suffocating in my own home. We barely spoke anymore. The only things we exchanged were words about the most mundane things. Chores, bills, whether the trash had been taken out. We were ghosts in the same house, living parallel lives, but never truly existing in each other's world. I started sleeping in the guest room. I couldn't stand the thought of sharing a bed with her anymore. The intimacy we once had, whether it was physical or emotional, felt shattered. I couldn't bring myself to touch her, let alone hold her. I had no interest in the idea of counseling, no interest in fixing what had been broken beyond repair. There was no going back from this. I couldn't pretend anymore. Each night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering how things had gone so wrong. I'd replay the moments leading up to her confession, searching for any sign I might have missed. But there was nothing. She'd been careful. I hadn't noticed a damn thing until it was too late. The emptiness was suffocating. I felt like I was losing my mind. My life, my future, had been ripped away in an instant, and I couldn't find a way to put it back together. Erica would come to me sometimes, when she thought I was calm enough to talk. She'd ask me, "Do you still love me?" I never knew how to answer. The truth was, I wasn't sure anymore. Love wasn't enough. Not when it had been shattered like this. One evening, she tried again, standing in the doorway of the guest room, her face streaked with tears. "I don't know why I did it," she whispered. "I swear I don't, but I need you. I need us." I looked at her, numb. "You broke me," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "And I don't think I can fix myself. Not with you." The words hung in the air between us like an unspoken finality, but neither of us could say what we both knew was true. The damage was too deep. She left that night, after we barely spoke. I don't even remember what happened after that. I just remember the emptiness that settled in, a constant companion. I couldn't look at her anymore. I couldn't even look at myself. I made an appointment with my doctor the next day. I'd never been one to take medication, but after weeks of spiraling, I knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I needed help. I needed something to numb the pain. The doctor prescribed meds to help with the panic attacks and the overwhelming depression. I took them reluctantly, but I needed something to get through the day, something to get me out of bed in the morning. The letters kept coming, though I never responded. I'd leave them on the kitchen counter, unread. I'd tell myself it didn't matter. She'd destroyed everything. There was nothing left to save. But deep down, I knew. I was broken, and there was nothing left to hold on to. And the worst part was knowing that even if Erica begged for forgiveness, even if she changed overnight and became the person I once knew, it wouldn't matter. It was too late. The trust was gone, and without it, there was nothing left of us. We existed in the same space, breathing the same air, but we were done. Scene 7. The divorce. The house felt emptier with each passing day, and yet it still felt like Erica was everywhere. The silence between us was thick, like a fog that we couldn't see through. I spent my days lost in a blur of work, therapy, and half-hearted attempts to keep up appearances. I never thought I'd be the guy to get a divorce. I had always thought love would fix everything, that with enough effort, things could be patched up. But the truth was, the damage Erica had done wasn't something you could fix with love or apologies. It wasn't something you could bandage with empty words or promises. The trust was gone, and without that, there was no foundation left. Months went by in this cold, mechanical routine. We shared a house, but I barely recognized her anymore. We barely spoke. Conversations were limited to logistics. Who was picking up the groceries? Which bills needed to be paid? Who was handling the trash? The warmth between us had withered, and I knew it wasn't coming back. I kept waiting for something to change, but it didn't. Erica tried. She would leave me notes, write me letters, all of them full of regret and begging me to give us another chance. But I couldn't. I couldn't forgive her. I couldn't erase what she had done to me, to us. One evening, she came to me, the look in her eyes resigned, like she finally understood that there was no more hope. "I think we both know what needs to happen," she said, her voice quiet but steady. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Yeah, I think so." She was sitting on the edge of the bed, her hands in her lap, her posture defeated. "I don't want to lose you," she said, her voice breaking. "But I can't keep living like this. I know it's too late, and I'm sorry." "I don't know if I can forgive you, Erica," I said, the words coming out harder than I intended. "I don't know if I ever will. You destroyed everything. You broke something that can't be fixed." She nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I don't know why I did it. I wish I could make it right. But I understand why you can't look at me the same way anymore." The ache in my chest was raw. I wanted to scream, to throw everything I could at her. But instead, I just stared at her, knowing in my gut that this was the end. "It's done, Erica. I can't go back to what we were. I'm not the same person I was before. And you've changed me in ways I can't undo." She let out a shaky breath. I know I've lost you, and I don't blame you. I'm sorry." I stood up, pacing the room, trying to hold myself together. I couldn't cry. I wouldn't. Not now. Not after everything. "You've broken me, Erica," I said, voice tight. "And now I'm just trying to figure out how to rebuild." "I understand," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I don't want to make this harder. If you want a divorce, I'll agree. I don't want to fight you on it." And just like that, the final nail was driven in. The decision was made. We filed for divorce a few weeks later. It wasn't dramatic, no shouting or ugly fights. There were no scenes or accusations, just the cold, hard truth that we couldn't go on. She was remorseful, but she also understood that this was the inevitable consequence of her actions. There was a strange kind of relief in it, even though I felt like I had just lost a part of myself. I was finally free from the constant emotional turmoil, from the betrayal that had lodged itself in my gut. But that didn't mean I was okay. I wasn't okay. I was far from it. But I was taking steps, small ones, to rebuild my life. I started focusing more on therapy, on making sense of what had happened, on understanding what went wrong. I wanted to know how I had allowed myself to become so broken, so consumed by her lies. I had to know how to fix myself, because I couldn't keep living like this. The weeks after the divorce papers were signed felt like a blur. I was numb, not really living, just going through the motions. I didn't even know what I was supposed to do next, but I kept telling myself that I was doing the right thing, that it was for the best. As much as I hated it, the divorce was a relief. The constant tension was gone. The waiting for things to get better, hoping that she would change or that I could somehow forgive her, it was over. It had to be. For the first time in months, I started to think about what I deserved in a partner. Someone who would be faithful, who would honor me the way I had honored her. Someone who wouldn't lie to me, who wouldn't destroy the foundation of our relationship. I started to picture a future with someone who truly valued me, and as much as I wanted to forget everything about Erica, I knew that I had to heal. It was going to take time, but I was determined to move forward. The chapter with Erica was over, and I was ready to start a new one. Scene 8. The accident. 5 months after the breakup, I was still stuck in the fog of it all. The mornings were the worst. Waking up in an empty bed, the weight of the silence pressing down on me. I couldn't get used to the quiet. Even after everything, I still felt like I was living in a world where Erica was just around the corner, waiting to come back. I hadn't been to the house in weeks. The last time I went, I packed up the rest of my things, and that was it. The house was her space now. My space was wherever I could find it. The therapy I'd been going to helped, but it didn't take away the constant ache that lived in my chest. I knew I was better off without her, but the pain didn't know how to stop. On a rainy Friday, I decided to take a drive to clear my head. I hadn't seen my friends much, and I hadn't been paying attention to my own needs. A quick run to the store for food turned into a way longer trip than I'd planned. My stomach had been empty for hours, and my brain felt like it was lagging behind, still in the fog. I didn't even realize I was on autopilot until I tried to merge back onto the main road and glanced in my rearview mirror. I barely tapped the brake in time, but it was enough to cause a slow-speed fender bender. My heart jumped in my throat. I wasn't hurt, but my pride took a hit. It was a dumb mistake. I stepped out of the car to exchange information with the other driver. She was about my age, and when she got out of her car, I saw she wasn't angry or upset. In fact, she looked more concerned about me than the dent in her bumper. "Are you okay?" she asked, her tone calm and surprisingly kind. "Yeah, I'm fine," I said, wiping the rain off my face. Just, wasn't paying attention." She smiled faintly, the rain running down her face, but she didn't look mad. "It's not the end of the world," she said. "Accidents happen." We exchanged information, and I felt an odd sense of relief, not because of the accident, but because of her demeanor. It was the first time in months I didn't feel like I was the one dragging around the weight of the world. Her kindness caught me off guard, and for the first time in ages, I felt like someone didn't see me as a broken person, but as someone who had just made a mistake. After we finished exchanging details, I found myself hesitating. "You okay?" I asked, still stuck in a fog of guilt from the collision. "Can I call you tomorrow to check on everything?" Her smile widened a little. "That's sweet of you, but I'm fine. It's really not a big deal." She paused, then added with a little laugh, "Although, if you want to make it up to me, you can grab coffee and dessert sometime. Maybe even a drink to go with it." I wasn't sure what to say. "Yeah, okay," I said, catching myself off guard. "I'll check in tomorrow." She waved and got in her car, driving off before I could say anything more. The whole encounter felt surreal, but in a way, it was a relief. Maybe it was the rain, maybe it was the kindness. But I hadn't had a conversation like that in months. The next day I kept thinking about it, about how easy it felt. How I hadn't expected it to feel like that. Like I wasn't a mess, like I wasn't drowning. It was small, but it felt like a crack in the shell I'd been living in for months. I dialed her number, hesitated for a moment, then pressed call. She picked up on the first ring. "Hey, it's you," she said with a laugh, a little too casual. "I thought you might have changed your mind about coffee and dessert." I smiled, the first real smile I'd had in weeks. "I didn't change my mind, just wanted to check in. And I might have wanted an excuse to talk to you again." She laughed again, and I heard something in it that made me feel lighter. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like the past was sitting on top of me, dragging me down. "Well, I'm glad you called," she said. "How about we meet up tomorrow?" "Sounds good," I replied. And just like that, something inside me shifted. Scene 9. A new connection. I met Lauren for coffee the next day, and it felt like stepping into a whole new world. A world where I wasn't defined by the failure of my marriage or the weight of betrayal. A world where I could just be myself. It wasn't like I had expected anything monumental from the meeting, but there was something about Lauren's calmness, her easy smile, that made the conversation flow. No awkward silences, no need to talk about heavy stuff right off the bat. "Thanks for calling yesterday," she said, as we sat down at a little cafe near the park. Her eyes were kind, and there was a warmth in her voice that felt safe. I didn't think you'd follow through, honestly. I figured you'd just say it was no big deal, but you actually seemed to care. I shrugged, feeling a little embarrassed. I don't know. It just felt like the right thing to do. Well, it was. I appreciated it, she smiled. A lot of people wouldn't have. I think we've all got enough chaos in our lives without some stranger causing even more. Her words hit me harder than I expected. Chaos. That was exactly what my life had been for the past several months. A whirlwind of anger, grief, and hopelessness. And just like that, sitting across from Lauren, I realized how desperately I needed something stable, something normal. We talked for a while about simple things, her job as a nurse, my ongoing therapy. She was open about her life too, talking about her family, her experiences with patients, and even the oddball things that happened on the job. It was refreshing, this back and forth, that didn't feel like I was carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. She asked me if I was okay. Really okay. I think I'm getting there, I said, leaning back in my chair. It's been rough. I mean, divorce, the whole thing. But, yeah, I'm taking things one day at a time. She nodded, and her expression softened, but she didn't push. I appreciated that. It felt like she wasn't looking for me to pour out all my misery, like she just wanted to be there. And for the first time in months, I felt seen for who I was right then. Not the broken version of me who'd been dragging his feet through life, but someone who was trying to rebuild, who still had the chance to feel something positive. What about you? I asked, curious about her life. What keeps you going? Lauren smiled a little, her eyes brightening. Life's too short to sit on the sidelines. You have to find things that bring you joy, even when it feels like it's falling apart. I love my job, but it's the little things, family dinners, a good book, quiet mornings, that keep me grounded. It's the balance, I thought about her words for a second, letting them sink in. Balance. That was the missing piece in my life, the part I'd lost along the way. All the chaos, all the focus on Erica, on trying to fix something that couldn't be fixed, had left me with nothing but exhaustion. I hadn't made room for joy, for little things. I hadn't made room for me. Yeah, I said quietly. I get that. She took a sip of her coffee and smiled at me. You seem like you're doing better, she said. Not that I'm an expert or anything, but you don't look as weighed down as you did yesterday. It was a simple observation, but it meant a lot more to me than it probably should have. For the first time in a long while, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I was starting to come up for air. We didn't talk about my divorce. We didn't talk about the pain that had swallowed me whole. Instead, we talked about everyday stuff, and that was enough. It was refreshing to talk to someone who didn't know my past, who wasn't judging me for the mess I was trying to crawl out of. It was just normal. As we finished our coffee, I realized something. I didn't feel heavy anymore. The burden I'd carried for months, the one that had made every day feel like a struggle, had lightened. Lauren didn't fix me, but in her own way she reminded me that there was still life outside the mess I'd created with Erica. I'd like to see you again, I said, surprising myself with the words. Lauren's smile widened. I'd like that too. For the first time in a long while, I felt a spark of hope, like maybe there was something worth looking forward to, something that wasn't broken, something I hadn't destroyed. Scene 10. Moving forward. As the weeks passed, I found myself spending more time with Lauren. It wasn't some grand, dramatic shift, but it felt like I was finally letting go of the heavy baggage that had weighed me down for so long. I had been holding on to the past, clinging to the mess Erica had left behind. But Lauren, well, she gave me something I hadn't felt in months, space to breathe. We kept things casual, slow, and steady. It wasn't about rushing into anything or trying to make up for lost time. It was just about enjoying the present, finding comfort in each other's company without the weight of expectations. She never pressured me. She never pushed me to open up too fast. But when I did, she listened, really listened, without judgment. It wasn't always easy. Some nights, I'd lie awake thinking about Erica, wondering if I'd ever be able to truly forgive her. The betrayal still stung, especially when I saw how differently Lauren treated me, how simple things could feel so much lighter with her. The comparison, though unfair, was there. But I also knew it was part of healing. It was part of learning what I deserved in a relationship: honesty, trust, respect. things I hadn't gotten with Erica. Lauren never asked for my past. She never needed to know the details of my broken marriage. We didn't rush into sharing every piece of ourselves, but the parts we did share, we handled carefully. It wasn't about recreating the mistakes of the past, but building something new. One afternoon, we went for a walk in the park. The sun was setting, and the crisp autumn air felt like a breath of fresh air in a life that had been suffocating. "Are you okay?" Lauren asked, her voice soft but steady. I looked over at her and smiled, genuinely. "I'm getting there. I really am." She grinned back at me, her eyes warm and understanding. "Good. You deserve to be okay. You've been through hell." I chuckled, rubbing the back of my neck. "Yeah, it feels like I've been walking through fire for a while, but I'm getting used to it." "And what about love?" she asked, her tone lighter but with a hint of curiosity. "Do you think you'll ever be able to love again?" The question hung in the air, and I felt my chest tighten. It was too soon, wasn't it? But then I thought about it. Really thought about it. "I think I can," I said slowly, my voice a little unsure but determined. "Maybe not in the way I loved before, but yeah, I think I can love again. And I'm not rushing it. I don't need to. But I'm open to it." She nodded, squeezing my hand as we walked. "I think that's the best place to start." For the first time in months, I felt truly hopeful. Not in the way I had once hoped that things would get better with Erica, but in a way that was grounded in what I could control. I wasn't just looking for closure anymore. I was focused on opening a new door, one that would lead me towards something real, something worth building. I knew the scars from my marriage would always be there, but they weren't the thing that defined me anymore. The betrayal, the pain, it wasn't my identity. It was part of my past, and I'd learned to carry it with me in a way that didn't make me weak, but stronger. I didn't know where this would go with Lauren. I wasn't ready to rush into anything. But I knew one thing. I was ready for a future that was mine, a future with someone who valued me, someone who saw me for who I was and accepted all the pieces, flawed, broken, and whole. I was ready to start a new chapter, a chapter that didn't involve Erica or her lies, or the past that had held me prisoner for far too long. A chapter where I could heal, love again, and most importantly, find peace with myself. As we walked side by side, I realized that I had started to rebuild, not just my life, but my sense of self-worth. And for the first time in ages, I didn't feel like I was just surviving. I was living. The chapter with Erica was closed, and for the first time in a long time, I was finally ready to start a new one.